found in Austria and dated about 40,000 years old. So that really shows you that the whole planet was populated by black people at that time. So the Kushite formed the Shang dynasty, first dynasty of China. The Harappan dynasty, the Dravidians in India, in Persia, the Sumerian Empire. Babylon was a Kushite empire. And
What? What?
You mean what?
Burn Babylon.
And that is why we don't completely throw away the Bible, because some of us are not at the stage to throw it away yet. You still have to use it.
No, hold on. You have to say that again now. Say that again. You said Babylon.
It's a Kushite empire.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because even the Bible describes it as such.
Mm-hmm.
You see? Kush, son of Nimrod,
Mm-hmm.
and then give you the whole relation. You see?
Right.
And we know say Nimrod, Sumeria, that aspect. You see? But it's a whole black family, historically and regionally.
Right, but given, as we say, in a negative light. So till, we are born Babylon, right? Because we have the history presented in the Bible, or is that of a later date of Babylon, when because we know say most of that era there, a whole heap of colonization, that entire era been through. You understand me? And while when we speak of Kemet, we speak of the long unbroken, you understand me, dynastic periods, you understand? But at the same time, they were breaks here and there within it, you understand me? And so one time the color might change, the color might a little different. You talk about Cleopatra and such, you understand?
Yes. So all of that now you have to have on a timeline. When are the different invasions, because that will cause a lot of confusion. Because since Alexander the Greek and all of them, the whole sacredness of the art and the language get the face and pervasiveness enter into the culture, and people use that and associate it with the history more so than the history itself. You understand?
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with that. But
so Babylonia. So the idea of Babylonia, I mother want you to touch upon little, Babylon,
It comes down to identity and culture. We as African people struggled with our own identity, because the world you live in tell us say you never create nothing, you're just a bunch of slaves. And anytime you think about history, the only thing you can think about is yourself in the bottom of a boat. Right? So therefore you do not reflect. Sankofa. So that whole aspect of development of the mind missing. You understand me? Whereas no matter what anybody been through, they will use it as a catalyst to develop. The Jews will tell you never again. Never again. You see? But we become completely ignorant of our history and identity and culture. So this is the problem. If you only have one book, and you don't have no more book, you don't have no TV neither, you don't have no internet, you don't have no radio, you don't have no father neither, or your family system mash up, you don't even know none of your uncle, everything mash up. You need hope. So this book now, it provides hope. It's a good book. I keep telling you, it's a good book. You just have to understand it and start believing it. So you go into the book now. You identify yourself with a character in the book. The character might name Nehemiah and Jeremiah. And even though you have African characters in the book like Tahaka, which is from the history of archaeology, living character, which we can look up and follow his story. People don't know that. He's an African king. The highlight is on the mythological characters. Right? So people go in and identify mythologically. So once you identify as, you identify as, no, you're not going to identify as the Jebusite, because the Jebusite get defeat, right? So now you're identifying as a Jew, without knowing who is a Jew, what is the differences between these terms, how these terms have evolved over time, right? So you identify as that. You get none of the billions of dollars that's appropriated for that cause, but that's the only identification. You identify as a Jew. That's all you know. So now anybody who take the Jews in a captivity are your enemy. So burn Babylon. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
You're no African no more. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
And the same problem you find when people will not.
Who allegedly took into captivity. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm on little mystery. We just give credit to it. All right, thank you very much. We just have to build our history. And the key is that the whole realm of archaeology is helping you because the truth can't hide. But then when you negate it, to hold on to your belief system, which we can trace back to the plantation, right? That is what really creates the problem for the mental advance. So and it's the same thing. When it comes to, hey, wicked Pharaoh, let my people go. You're seeing yourself as a people who mythologically are running away from Africa. You know, so till all the sea of a part, you run out of Africa. So mythologically now, when you realize, no, I'm an African. What is the African story? And you will see it on the Meneptah Stela, which it depicts that it basically is a victory stela. And it says that there was a war and the king defeated the Meshmesh, the Teleset, and he defeat everybody. And this is the only place in our history that the name Israel is written. It says Israel itself is no more. And that was the reference from the African perspective. So what you call it? I don't remember these things now. The Exodus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the key is to just get them things at their head, man, and the African culture. So this so-called Exodus, from the perspective of the African kings, all right, who left the records, now in stone, we can read it. That's and part of the program is I'm gonna teach you to read it, the glyph, for your own self, and you can see where this come from and where that come from. And so where was I? Maybe I could catch up there.
Yeah?
No,
Yeah, man, the glyphs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Read the history, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, so the point I'm making is this, and it's very important. You identify with a foreign people. The history is, there has been 3 intermediate periods. One of them have to do with just a breakdown of the society. Bad governance, bad king, everybody for themselves, the whole thing just break down. Second intermediate period, already with the history of ancient Kemet here, if you follow it. It started in university level. Second intermediate period is the Hyksos. You see?
Mm-hmm.
That means the foreigners enter in Africa. This is the only place they're going to enter. They're not going to come from South Africa. They're not going to come from West. And they're not going to come from North. This is the land space that people have to walk and come into Africa.
Right. And you're speaking about which land space?
We speak about Northeast Africa. Currently, historically, the land of Canaan, which is again son of Kush. And the present day contentious lands of Palestine and Israel.
Contentious lands, yes. Everyone say holy land, right? Yeah, man. Even Rasta have it as a holy land, and the Bible have it as holy land, and all these things. And this brings to our next. Hold on. Brings to our next important point about the whole religion and being used as like a social political movement. Then say religion is not really a righteous movement when you really look into it. You understand me? Because we see where all these we see where the followers have religious ties to the land, but the creators of the history, so they more have political ties. Right? Or political economic ties based upon the history and even the present. So so go ahead with the history,
and cultural ties as well. Right? Because let me tell you something. If you meet and you can do this experiment on your own. Just see a Chinaman one day and just stop him and be very nice and say, "Hi, how you doing? You want to go to the Holy Land?" In his mind, he doesn't understand your concept. But any Holy Land is going to be somewhere in China. In his cultural frame. Because he has not been removed from that. Right? Completely or entirely. Right? So, but when you come to a person of historic, Judeo-Christian faith, the Holy Land is located in that region. All right? If a person is
Islam too, yeah man, and yeah.
Right? So it depends on where you're oriented to think. All right? So historically now, this has been a buffer zone. Buffer zone. The historical relevance is that if you are a king, you cannot leave it. And this was a lesson learned to the Africans after the 18th dynasty. You know, when the 19th dynasty came in with Ramesses and all of that, Taiwan, they get very militarized now because they would have learned the lessons after the invasion of the Hyksos and realized that, no, we have to strengthen our buffer zone. So there you see the explorations of Amos, right? And Thutmosis. And you see them expanding outward because they realize if you leave this without no security, your enemy takes this and then it becomes the launching pad into Africa. So from the African perspective, it was the buffer zone. The Holy Lands was within Africa itself, in the interior, and along the Nile Valley. So this land became very important for the Assyrians. If they are going to conquer in Africa, they have to control that first or influence the people who are in that region. So those people in that region became a bargaining chip, you see, for future colonizers over the time frame. So historically it has been fought over for that reason. And eventually it will become a holy claim for that reason and for other reasons as well. You see?
Yes, brother. Yes. Because definitely, yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours is not enough to go through the information, you know what I mean? We have up Narmer's palette, you know, we never really delve deep into that, you know what I mean? We have, we've been going through, wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire, just some of the highlights, information that you would find in it, if you just join us, of course, talking about, contemporary book list, man. For the contemporary movement, a book list for the contemporary movement. That's really got through and show Africa's historical global influence. So, anything else you want to talk about as far as, any one of the topics, as far as Narmer's palette, as far as Drusilla Dungy, give you another 10 minutes or so, and then I might just play a little more of the preface.
Appreciation of the work you put in. So there are books with collaborate books.
Right. But we don't want to give them too much book one time, you know.
This is not too much. If they want, you don't have to get it into more than one book. This is scholarship now and we're already way behind. If the
hold on, man. No, man.
Information too much, you just play some music in the background when we are talking. So you need Stolen Legacy after you read this. And then you need Myth or Reality, Shake and Teach Up. I just recommend them 3 books there. Because the whole program is based off of the UNESCO work, 1963, 8-volume General History of Africa. So we'll be going through that. Once we go through that, each one of those are 400 page, right? But we will just point you to the right material. So once you go through this program, you'll have a PhD in knowledge of yourself. You understand? So we're not be shy about it. But anyway, if you come back to Drusilla Dungy Houston, this book is what places Africa at the forefront of civilization itself and show you how we project outward into the world, and we're going to preach China, Persia, India, Saudi Arabia. It show you how we, and this is why George James important to couple up with this work now. George James give you the developments, how the Greeks got it. Exactly how the Greeks got it in a deeper way, whereas Drusilla Dungy Houston went deeper into Saudi Arabia, the Sabaean kingdom and all of those. But how the Greeks got it, it's very important because how the Greeks learned from the Africans is clear in the work of Herodotus. You see, if you check Plato, Strabo, check Josephus, who lived in the 1st century. Strabo living at the same time frame. Herodotus go back about 500 BC. All of these people, they don't hide it. We learned this stuff from the Africans in Northeast Africa. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't know crap. Right? Martin Bernal, another one book we just squeeze in an author. Right? For people who can only take the information from Europeans themselves. Because there are some of us who can only do that. This is a European whose father is among the excellence of archaeology, Martin Bernal. And he came out and taught the truth. So the heck with it. Greece was developed by the Africans. If the Africans never came here and laid the foundation, there'll be no Greece for us to talk about. All right? The Trojan wars and all of that stuff. So when you understand the African worldview, you realize you're front and center, and no people can claim to be more chosen by the Most High, by God, by anything more than you. As long as you have that kiss of the sun, what we consider to be melanin, that is a problematic psychology for people moving forward. And that one, explain it. You know, we need somebody to explain these things further. Don't just expect that they're going to believe that and teach my child that, because that is inferiority complex. Anything else upon the list where we need to discuss?
Got you now?
So, alright, so look. People will argue and say, hey, what is the earliest language? A lot of our people caught up in a Hebrew. Why? Judeo-Christianity. You cannot escape that worldview as long as you only read and expose yourself to one book. It is a good book. My grandmother used to read it to me. Alright? And she better read it dearly upon her chest. However, we are at a time where we have shifted into an Aquarian age. The time of spirit. The time where the mind transcends everything. So anybody whose mind is being dictated to a book, particularly a book edited at the onset of the tragic transatlantic, the book coincides with the whole effort of Britain to unify itself in order to go forth. You see? And the source material of that work is what you need to get into if you want to seek, or you want to be a seeker and not just a believer. And I'm giving it to you right now. You have the Septuagint, which was the Greek work, right? The Septuagint. That came straight out of the Coptic. The Coptic are the people who were mixed race when Alexander the Greek came in 300 BC. And they learned somewhat the mystery system, and they wrote it down in the form of the Septuagint. And then, religiously, they say that a lot of it came from Hebrew, but however, we cannot trace the Hebrew language beyond 500 BC, and at that time it was Aramaic. And then you put some characters behind it and claim it to be a Hebrew language. But it is Aramaic, and you put some independent characters, and you consider it another language. But at the time, that language was not a recognized language at all. You see, it was on the periphery of worldview. And then you have language like the Sabaean language, which that intertwined in Ethiopia with Geese. You see? But under Geese now, the Italians will claim that they created the characters, because once the foreigner come in and create the characters, he say he created the language, but the language has always been spoken. It's like we are talking A, B, Z, it's like me and you talking in Patois. Me and you are chatting in Patois then, plain out. But we can't write down what we are saying outside of A, B, C, D, E. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
So there's a linguistic aspect of this thing. You know what I'm saying? There's the Sanskrit language, which is the Indian version that was, let's say, influenced by the Aryans. When it's come back again to the language in another popular one, Swahili, it is the same thing. The Arabs replaced or created the Arabic characters, but the language has always been an African language. You see? So when we get into African languages, most of us start with Hebrew first, and I wonder why we're not, and again, the word, listen to this, when you read the the word Heru, it simply can come back to Hebrew. So Heru is understood to be the Son of God. It's chosen. It's everywhere, right? So if you say if that's what you're claiming, then explain. But we can't just accept that we are inferior people and teach it to our kids and say the next set of people are the chosen people. No, we need an explanation to that moving forward. And then once we clear up these things, now we start dealing with the economics and business, and we can walk up straight and smile properly, you know, without having to fake it. But the faking it and going along with it ain't gonna work no more. Just have to embrace the culture fully as a people, and before you can embrace it, you have to knock down the 19th century mentality. You know what I mean?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
One more language, the Meroitic script. That language is the Nubian script. And that has not been deciphered fully yet. This is what we need to construct our mind. Sit down and read the same thing over and over again. It's not going to develop. You understand? We want some volunteer right now to take on this African language, which we believe this is the language which is going to explain everything having to do with Ethiopia. The Meroitic script, the Kushite script, the last script spoken by the Cushitic people up to 400 AD. This is the writing, the script that the treaty with Queen Kandaka Queen, Amenret, Amenoraya, that's how it's written. But Amenret is what is in the script. So she forced Caesar Augustus to sign a treaty when they tried to attempt to invade Nubia, and they couldn't go any further, and they had to draw the border right there. So that's a victory for Africa that we need to understand how important that was at the time. You know, so when we talk again, we can pick up from there. You see what I mean?
Yes, indeed. You know what I mean? And even take the books them in stages, step by step, because I mean, really and truly, wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire, you know what I mean? But it might take more than one of them kind of program. Yeah. When we have time where we do a long program, which them that we might have to schedule some other ways are, you know what I mean, are the I have to do them one day more independently. On Positive Vibrations Radio and these things, you understand me, or on this platform or on the DeBenki platform, because the DeBenki platform, yeah.
Sorry. Well, the technology department is not my department, you know?
Well, I mean, in time, you know, I don't know our department, you know, because, yeah, we are, what you would say now, mid-age, or what the case is. I don't know our department, but yeah, we are learning it little by little. Yeah, so most of that we still have to go over again the next time, like some of the last part, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it takes repetition.
Right.
And it really does. And yeah, it was just
or even just to flesh out a lot of it, because, you know what I mean, you talk about the Kandaka Queen and this and that and the treaty, that's like a whole hour, 2-hour show by itself also, you get me?
But the gist of the takeaway that I hope the listeners understand that we're not an inferior people, you see?
And there's a whole heap of history, a whole heap. You understand me? It's a whole heap there that we need to sing outside of the regular and the Bible history what they give away.
Yes, the information is there, but the analysis is where we need more work. You see?
Definitely. So, yeah, man, we hope to do this again Sunday. We hope to do this every Sunday, every Wednesday. Yes, indeed, right on this platform. Do remember, yeah, man, everything continue on the Positive Vibration Shame with the DeBenki show. Might be a little bit earlier on the Positive Vibration. Then we jump into them sort of reasoning, yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, man, just put it out and make the people them go and meditate on that. You understand me? And give me the feedback.
Definitely.
If it's too much, just put some music with it, but me, man.
No, man, we not put no music with it, man. We just try present the information in a nice chronological order, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but me not go hold back when it comes to the truth. Me just have to tell you, so this is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And this is what it is.
Yeah, nobody now say for old back. What kind of old back you talk about?
No, because I tell you, our people have a digestion issue when it comes to truthful information. They can listen to any amount of lie over and over and over.
Oh.
You know the problem with it. You see, but once you come at them like this, them head all start at them. I tell you.
Yeah.
But once you chisel away that, no, we get into some serious work and development. But right now we are chiseled away at the 19th century philosophy, under which our people continue to operate without knowing it. You see what I'm saying?
Right, definitely. All right, brother.
Thanks.
Yeah, my respect.
Every time.
QR code right there, yeah. Take you right to the radio station 24/7s. Yeah, to take us out, as I said, yeah, I'll play some more of this preface of, the wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire. Yeah, man, the first book recommended here on the book list. Yeah, man, as we say, most of these you can get, audiobook. Yes, man. Wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire by Drusilla Dungy Houston. Yeah, Past Vibration. Yeah, man. DeBenki. African Renaissance. Wahemi Meso. African Rebirth. Yeah.
We will visit old Ethiopia, whereas Herodotus said, the gods delighted to banquet with the pious inhabitants. We will study the land and the ancient race. The old race will next win our attention. That Petric found in Egypt of distant and unique culture, who were the people of the earlier and superior civilization of the first dynasties. Down through this prehistoric vista, we see Happy Arabic, with her brilliant primitive culture and her unrivaled literature of her later days. On the screen flashes the rich and surpassing culture of old Chaldea, which belonged to the ancient Kushite Empire of Ethiopians. Next comes veiled and mysterious India, the scene of charm and story and magic fable, with her subtle mysticism and philosophy. Tarrying a while with the congress and life of the ancient Medes and Persians, the trail runs far afield into the dominions of Western Europe, and the striking questions array themselves demanding to be answered. Who were the Celts? Who were the Teutons? And what was the origin of the so-called Aryan race? The author was as much astounded as will be the reader as to what this study reveals. It leaves us wondering if there is any Aryan race. We learn in the study of the races of Western Europe to understand the hatreds of Europe that underlaid the World War. We learn that when the Celt and Teuton called the Ethiopians of the New World Uncle and Auntie, they are using titles that are scientifically true. Our story passes on to another remnant of the ancient Kushite Empire, that baffling race, the Iberians, now represented by the Basques, then to the Berbers of North Africa, another branch of the Kushite race. Sometimes scientists have called them the descendants of the people of Atlantis. Next succeed the singular facts about the life of the mysterious Etruscans of old Italy, who were the teachers of the Romans. Then we follow the life and tragedy of the fleeting Pelagians, who were the fountain out of which later Greek culture welled. They were the people of the legends of Greek mythology. It is almost impossible to find anything but scanty fragments in the world's literature about any of these people of prehistoric days. But our text has compiled these fragments, so many of them, as to form fascinating chapters. Today, all of these subjects remain unexplained mysteries in the average book. We dwell for a while on the marvels of the lost civilization of the Aegean and stop to study the Greece of Homer and the meaning of the Greek legends, all having direct relationship to the ancient Kushites. Historic Greece in all her glory, but viewed from new angles, passed before us with the older and superior civilization of Asia Minor, which has been almost entirely overlooked in modern literature. Next, we come to the fact that the Phoenicians called themselves Ethiopians and that the Hebrew writers gave them the same name. Then we reflect upon the strange relationship of the family of Kushite tongues to the so-called Indo-European group of languages. The trail leads us high up to where we get a breathless view of the astounding Ethiopian religion. Next follows the chapter on the wonderful Ethiopians, who produce fadeless colors that have held their hues for thousands of years, who drill through solid rocks and were masters.
To the Wehemi, Mesu, the African Renaissance program from the book review series. And this book is called The Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire. So this book is an interesting book. It was written by Drusilla Dungy Houston, and this was in the 1920s.
Of the Ancient Kushite Empire by Drusilla Dungy Houston. Preface. The origin of civilization. The minds of men today are stirred with eager questionings about the origin of civilization and about the part the different races of mankind played in its development from primitive ages. The remains that archaeologists are uncovering in Egypt, Old Babylonia, and South America reveal that there were significant factors in the first development of the arts and sciences that history has failed to make clear. Scientists are busy today studying the types of those old civilizations and comparing them with those of the present. Our modern systems do not function for the masses to give them development and happiness as did some of the ancient cultures. Books upon the early life of man are very hard to secure. To seek the buried ruins of Troy, from the oft-repeated expression found by the author in research work. That, what the ancients said about the Ethiopians was fabulous. Curiosity was aroused to go back over the story of the ancients to agree or draw new conclusions.
This book we intend to review in a DeBenki series, the African-centered curriculum for development and for organization. So the Wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire was written by Drusilla Dungy Houston in about 1926. It was published for the first time. And the reason why it is important is because it gave an African-centered, researched, female worldview at a time when this was not the thing to do, and it was pioneering. So Drusilla Dungy was born in Virginia. It is in 1876. Her father, John William Dungy, and her mother, Lydia Dungy. Her father was visited and worked with and associated with the likes of Frederick Douglass and the activists of that time. Her mother herself was an educated woman. Drusilla had 8 siblings. She played the piano, she was a poet, she was a school teacher, later became a school principal in Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, she met her husband, Bryce Houston. She was the first black woman to write comprehensively covering the African history in modern times. Her work was initially chastised by the Eurocentrists of the time, both black and white. But over time, her work would gain much respect and recognition. And a lot of her work has been substantiated today by geneticists, anthropologists, archaeologists, and most of the professionalists. So, along with her brother, she worked on a local newspaper. It was named after Booker T. Washington. right? So she became preoccupied with this research. Using the knowledge of this rich history, she used it as a tool to motivate, and she came up with creative slogans like, not only is we somebody, but we great somebodies. Here are two quotes from Drusilla Dungy Houston, found in the introduction of her book. Out of anthropology, ethnology, geology, paleontology, archaeology, as well as history, I have dug up an irrefutable arsenal of facts. Facts that Harvard, Yale, or even the cowardly scholars in our race dare not refute. She asks questions like, how can a leader point the way forward while being utterly ignorant of the past? Unquote. In the book, she makes the connections between the civilizations of early antiquity, linking the Indian Harappan Valley civilization to the civilizations along the Nile Valley. Her book challenges contemporary thought even today. Ms. Houston posed questions like, who were the Dravidians? She commented on the development of the early European states and asked, who were the Etruscans? Who were the Celtics? Who were the Teutons? To connect early high culture of the Mesopotamian region, she raised the question, who were the Sumerians? Making reference to the cultural links that expressed itself in art, linguistics, in beliefs, Ms. Dungy set forth an early framework to view the African origins of civilization by exploring the foundations and migratory patterns that led to the creation of the high-cultured civilizations of antiquity, such as those of the kingdoms of Kush, ancient Ethiopia, Kemet, ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, to the Iraq, ancient Babylon, the Persian Elamite Empire, to the Iran. The book establishes the foundations of these regions and the idea of the African origin of civilization, and it names the civilizing role of the Kushites. The tide is slowly shifting towards a greater cultural awareness. The book helps to shape and recreate a centered African worldview. The book designed also to counter the outdated racial theories that still exist. Much of what Drusilla had asserted in 1920s in the wonderful Ethiopians of the ancient Kushite Empire is being taught today in universities by a host of dedicated professors like Dr. Malife Kete Osante, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Sandra Richards, Marimba Ani, and many others in the field of Africana studies. Ms. Houston was a true pioneer of Black studies, a movement that by the 1970s would grow and become an entire field of studies and a philosophy to be implemented at the college level. The first king of history who established the idea of the unified nation in about 3100 BC is known as King Narmer Menes, the oldest civilization for which there is record, and the nation that gave us writing, astronomy, medicine, art, architecture, and civilization in general was of dark hue, and essentially an African civilization. She offered that at an early time, a comprehensive view of ancient African civilization. If the whole world believes lies about you and you believe the lies about yourself, it reflects in everything, in self-esteem, in attitude, and in outcome. This condition will create anxiety and impact the social relations. You see, people are prone to believe bad things or good things that they have heard. So it is important that this information comes to the forefront in order to counter narratives that have shaped the minds for centuries. And until we are able to collectively grasp a global and unbiased worldview, we will continue to collectively replicate the same outdated, outmoded ideas. These ideas might be in the interest of those who benefit from those ideas, and it is in their interest to maintain a status quo. But for the majority today, it is important that these ideas. So if you don't know who you are, if we have lost the words to define who you are, others will have a field day when defining who you are. The Phoenicians called themselves Ethiopians. The fierce Aztecs acknowledged that they had received the germ of civilization from an earlier Kushite inhabitant. The ruins of the Mayan civilization of North America displays the transplanting of the ancient arts of the Kushite culture. Also the Inca, whose culture was superior to that of Europe in its time. The wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire follows a trail of information rarely accessible then. However, much of these ideas that have been expressed have been confirmed by archaeologists today, geneticists today, anthropologists, and the whole range of professions. Today, technology also confirms this easily. This is a quote from the book. It is incredible that such rich treasures of information important for developing our understanding have been veiled. The Ethiopians are a race that does not die out under adversity, while other races are sullen and turn to self-destruction under adversity. They cheerfully press on. Even in the cotton fields, we can hear their voices sing on with messages of hope. And because the slave trade broke such remembrance, the Kushites walk among us with bowed heads, ignorant of the truths that is being awake, quote, awake, you sleeping Aryans, and become aware of the acute need of this unchained ability. The absence of this power is the cause of many breakdowns in modern society. Without this truth, nations cannot put over their programs. And without this truth, international councils cannot assign each race to their fulfillment in God's plan. Only then will we develop better men and women. The world will never be able to calculate this artistic and moral loss, unquote. Drusilla also suggests that without the implementation of this knowledge, civilization as we know it will fail and fall. Just think about this idea. If our children today knew and were taught the truth of old, it may cause them to see themselves in the footsteps of the great ones. How would society benefit as a whole from the bringing out of these innate abilities? The Kushites ruled 3 continents for millennia. Chapter 1 explores the origins of the Kushite and made the point at a time when it was not known outside of secret societies. Today it is known, but it has not trickled. The stories of these ancient kings and queens will cause the petty conquest of Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and the likes of Napoleon to fail in comparison. In fact, these men sought to be inspired by the Kushite influence all over the world, and particularly in Northeast Africa. Ethiopia was responsible for establishing and restoring the seat of power in what we consider today Egypt. The civilization and the developments came there from the south. We may see Ethiopia as a single country today in Africa. The Ethiopia this book speaks about, according to ancient maps, was widespread. The early Greeks considered Ethiopia the area between the Indus and the Ganges. The kingdom stretched as far as to the Iberian Peninsula, today Spain. The peoples of this race were the first to implement the concept of government. Stephanos of Byzantium writes, Ethiopia was the first established country on earth. and the Ethiopians are the first to set up the worship of the gods and to establish law. It maintains its institutions throughout millennia. The culture of this ancient empire founded the basis for the modern forms of. By discounting these more ancient cultures, we conceal the information needed to resolve modern problems. Kushite trade routes were established thousands of years ago, and some still exist. Where there was dirt, now there are roads. These routes extend on land and overseas. Ethiopia was the center and the seat of all international science, astronomy, and alchemy. All this was worked out long ago. It has been inherited and kept alive by our modern institute. We taught the art of efficient living. First, we gave the world agriculture and domesticated animals, developed art, welded iron. Most important, we gave technology. The most important technology of all is language. And without this, nothing would follow of consequence. Few understand the root of this modern culture. This knowledge is not possessed by the average college student. It has to be pieced together. The average history book contradicts what the ancients said about ancient times. If we know more about history and culture, there might be balance and truth in the world today and less war. Chapter 1 in Drusilla Dungee's book continues and reads, the following terms are associated with the Kushite foundations that expanded and stretched forth to the ends of the earth in about 8000 BC, up south along the Nile Happy River. There were the Kemites in the Levantine Canaanite area. They became the Phoenicians. In Europe, the Kushites were the Etruscans. In Chaldea, they were the Sumerians. And in Mesopotamia, they were the Babylonians. The Kushite established the Harappan Valley and the Dravidian civilization in the southern regions of India. The Elamites before Persia were of Kushites. The picture this book paints is that the early bringers of civilization, including the sciences and arts, were of dark-skinned origin. Their influences spread to as far as China, to the Iberian Peninsula, that is modern-day Spain, and into the Americas. The discoveries in art and sculptures and many ancient texts have pointed further in this direction. Today, it is a matter of will for the scholars to be explicit in stating these facts. The fact is that we owe a great deal to our ancient African ancestors for much of what we now take for granted. For example, taking a bath, building houses, and speaking with language itself. The author Baldwin cites in Prehistoric Nations on page 95 and 96. The Kushites are custodians of the cultures of the ancient Egypt and in early Chaldea, stating that these two nations broke away about 5000 BC. It was they who built the towers of Babel as well as the pyramids in Egypt. Baldwin mentions that in terms of sophistication, the Kushites were unrivaled up to 3000 BC. The rise of the Assyrians about 1300 BC began to curb this superior power. This curve began in the northern regions, but they held considerable influence up to into modern time in the south, in the Sabaean, in the Himyarite kingdoms, that is in Yemen and in Sudan, Ethiopia. The Kushites are also considered the Kemetic people, who are called Hamites. Whatever the terminology, they are the architectural geniuses of the world, who raised up magnificent edifices. The early cultural centers of influence would later be settled over by nomadic northerners who are considered to be a Semitic people. Chapter 1 of the book wraps up and explains how the deep cultural ideas were lost and misconstrued because of the attempts to appropriate the myths and legends of the ancient Kushites to the new northern nomadic conquerors. In India, the original people knew and acknowledged the kings of Kush that were centered in Meroe. The idea was eventually replaced by the Aryan origin after several invasions and after several generations. The Battle of Troy was a Kushite war. Memnon was an Ethiopian. Greek writers like Homer, who wrote of the Iliad, based their stories on the tales they inherited from the early peoples who inhabited that part of the world, when there was no Greece, and they helped to form Greece. Kushite, Kushite, man a Kushite. Yes. So basically, we will try to now break down this in a standard pattern. So it's like basically, what the thing I say is that, look, if you want to understand or overstand the history of ancient Africa, ancient Ethiopia, you go back to the ancient Kushite Empire. Why? Because the Kushites historically have represented to be the founders of the most ancient, sophisticated civilization in our history, in our history. And from that point, somewhere in that equatorial eastern region began to develop high techniques and that sophistication. So technology itself. You see that? So basically, these people began set forth to spread knowledge, sciences, deep knowledge of astrology, knowledge of how to link, live, how to think, thought, and how to be. But basically, the most ancient people, when you connect and we know that the oldest boats found in the same geographical region, what they call Lucy. When we check that up, we understand the origins and the earliest boats from this region. Now, historically, they try to make every attempt to hide that, especially in the 19th century, in the colonial era. They go as far as to plant bones, make it out of all different type of fossil, even plastic. They combine it and call it the Piltdown Man, and plant this artifact in England. And for years, almost 50 years, this was what was being taught in the schools. So this is why you find so much confusion today as the origin of mankind, because of that deliberate attempt to hide this kind of information, right? During the colonial era, which that was when history itself is being formulated and as to how it will be taught in the institutions, okay? So, we also look at the origin of civilization itself. That means you look at the first formation of society, the earlier forms of domesticating animal, agriculture, settled lifestyle as opposed to nomadic lifestyle, agriculture as opposed to sheep herding, vegetarian as opposed to the meatarian. You see, natural as opposed to that warlike characteristic. When you look at the origin of humanity, the original civilization, you start to look at this ancient Ethiopian Kushite region. The word Ethiopia is more recent, see? And the term Kush actually is spelled Kash, but just for the more familiar term, Kash is the spelling when we analyze the ancient texts and ancient languages itself. So that development will show how it spread itself across the Red Sea, Yemen, and develop in the Sabian language and come up into Arabia. You look into the Mesopotamia, you see how the kingdom Sumer, Babylon, all of these things emerge out of the south. Check Persia, the earlier Elamite, the writings correspond in that region as well. So that is the early Persia, and you see how it developed in the south. You go India, and you find the Dravidians, and you find the Harappan Valley, and you find that civilization again developed in the south. So, and all the way to China. So that is why we hear the term the global south. You see, referring to that origin of humans and origins of civilization as opposed to the northern control of the current situation. So you will hear these terms being used subtly. So, and then we also see migration path into the Americas. You know, we know the Phoenician are the early, we understand that we got English from Latin, Latin got Latin from phonics. So phonics came from the Phoenicians. Where did the Phoenicians get their language from? The Phoenicians were the old Canaanites. We know that the old Canaanite is corresponding to the Cushitic people. And you look at Anatolia, the Hittite, you look at all these civilizations, and you will realize that these civilizations are coming from, they have a foundation, okay? So digging deeper and deeper and deeper, you will find the source of these societies being developed in the south and coming from that Kushite region. So we talk again further as we get into our next book series. Look forward to that one. That one is very interesting. That one is called Africa, the Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality by Sheikh Anta Diop. So look forward to that in the book series, DeBenki's African Centered Curriculum. And definitely, one thing, if you were smart before, this curriculum series will make you smarter.
Positive Vibrations Radio.
Next, out of the dim haze of far antiquity rise the indistinct lines of Atlantis of old, the race that gave civilization to the world, the race that tamed the animals and gave us domestication of plants. The gods of the ancient world were the kings and queens of mystic Atlantis. The chapter, The Gods of Old, makes plain that the deities of Greece and Rome were also the kings and queens of the ancient Kushite empire of the Ethiopians, which was either the successor or the most famous branch of the Atlantic race.
Scared of height. Some people scared of driving fast. Some people scared of ghosts, some people scared of the truth.
Radio. Positive Vibrations with AZ. Positive Vibrations Radio on all streaming platforms.
What they need, what the people need, peace and love.
These princes and heroes that all the wonderful mythology of the ancients was woven. They were the deities that were worshipped in India, Chaldea, Egypt, and in Greece and Rome, which nations themselves must have been related to the race of Atlantis, that tradition said had been overwhelmed by the sea. Atlantis could not have been mythical, for her rulers were the subjects of the art and literature of all the primitive nations until the fall of paganism, long after the birth of Christ. Another division of Atlantis was transatlantic America. There the mysterious mound builders represent the ancient Kushite race. We studied the peculiar culture and genius of the fierce Aztec, who acknowledged that he received the germs of civilization from the earlier Kushite inhabitants. We passed southward and examined the higher development of the wonderful Mayas of North America, whose ruins are attracting special study today. And we find there transplanted the Kushite arts of the ancient world. Next, flashed the pictures of the marvelous culture and arts of the Incas superior to those of Western Europe in 1492. From America, the story turns to the Bronze and Iron Ages. We seek the origin of the mysterious bronze implements of Western Europe found in the hands of seemingly barbarous people. We seek for the place and the race that could have given the world the art of welding iron. The trail reveals that the land of the golden fleece and the garden of the golden apples of Hesperides were but centers of the ancient race, that as Kushite Ethiopians had extended themselves over the world. These are subjects that have attracted the study of world scholarship. They represent not mere myths, but are all that vast ages have left to us of events of primitive race history. Kushite art, in the heart of the African, answer many questionings of our hearts about Ethiopians. The series closes with a comparison of ancient culture with modern forms. The intelligence of the Kushite, his original genius, is held up beside the decadence of true ideals in the art and literature of the present. The revolt of civilization and dawn of a new world voice the concern of the thoughtful over the present decay of culture. We are sending forth this information because so few men today understand the primitive forces that are the root of modern culture. So superficial and prejudiced has been most modern research that many important and accepted theories of universal history have no actual basis in fact. The average modern historical book contradicts what the ancients said about the nations that preceded them. We cannot solve the stupendous problems that the world faces until we can read or write the riddle of the evolution of the races. Uninformed men make unsafe leaders. That is the primal cause for so many errors of judgment in state and national councils. We look upon them not as statesmen, but as promoters of petty politics. For out of their deliberations sprang no alleviation of the woes of the world. It is from this lack of understanding and leadership that the world suffers most today. We could discriminate between the true and false in our civilization if we knew more about primitive culture. The way by which the first man climbed must ever be the human way. Racial prejudices are the greatest menace to world progress. Classes clash because the wealth of the world concentrates more and more in the hands of a few. The tragedy of human misery increases. The increase of defectives, the growing artificiality of modern living, compels us to seek and blazon forth the knowledge of the true origin of culture and the fundamental principles that through the ages have been the basis of true progress. Only by this wisdom shall we know how to lift human life today. In most modern books there seems to be preconcerted understanding to coloniate and disgust the world with abominable pictures of the ruined Ethiopian, ruined by the African slave trade of 400 years. There seems to be a worldwide conspiracy in literature to conceal the facts that this book unfolds. Because of this suppression of truth, world crimes have been easily made possible against the Ethiopian. These people are held in low estimation because truth is hidden, which proves that today, though more favored races are at the apex of human accomplishment, yet in the earlier ages the wheel of destiny carried upward those who now seem hopelessly under. To wipe away the black stain of the slave trade, modern literature has represented the slave trade as having trafficked in depraved human beings. Today, the lower types of the Aryan race look upon them as creatures only fit for political and economic spoliation to fill the coffers of the colonial renegade who could not succeed at home. This type of the world finds it easy to stifle the life of ruined and defenseless races. This spoliation of the weak returned in a counterstroke from which it was impossible to escape in the World War. Belgium reaped in identical measure and kind what this type had meted out to the defenseless people of the Congo. Nations must reap what they sow. This is not the nature or intention of the better men of the civilized nations, but we are uninformed about alien peoples. We are narrow and provincial in our views. The hatred of the races sprang out of misunderstanding. The men of the world who have traveled and read and thought upon ethnological problems are the men who have the cultivated instincts of human brotherhood. Shall England, France, Germany, America suffer further because we have not taught the uninformed of the nations that we must pay a still heavier toll for a continued measure of injustice to weaker peoples? Innocent must suffer with the guilty, but it is in our power to inform and curb the power of the selfish. The question looms large in the minds of thinking men today, whether Ethiopians are worthy of equal opportunity. Let us settle forever out of time's irrefutable evidence whether if we gave him the chance, the Ethiopian would treat us as we have treated him. There need be no conjecturing, for the archives of the past hold the facts. The history of the Kushite Ethiopian down through the ages is one of the most thrilling as well as tragic of all time's age-old stories. It is almost incredible that its rich treasure for developing our understanding has so long remained veiled. The Ethiopian is a great race, probably the oldest. It is a race that does not die out under adversity. When other races are sullen or despairing and turn to self-destruction, these people cheerfully press on.
What they want, what they need, what the people need. Peace and love, what the people want. Peace and love, what the people need. They want to live in love with each other.
Vibrations with AZ. Positive Vibrations Radio.